kind old couple took in a poor little girl. Years later, she did the unexpected. The wind shrieked, an icy blade slicing through Ilara's tattered coat. Every gust threatened to topple her on the treacherous, glazed street. Snow, a swirling white curtain, bit at her exposed skin. Her toes had long surrendered to the cold, and a hollow ache gnawed incessantly at her stomach. One more street, she told herself. Just one more. Perhaps a discarded apple core, a crust of stale bread awaited. Anything to quell the hunger. Her legs buckled without warning. The world tilted, the ashen sky a dizzying vortex before the brutal impact of frozen pavement stole her breath. Icy water invaded her worn boots, a stark reminder of winter's dominion. Was this the end? A quiet fading into the blizzard's ravenous embrace. A sob, thin and reedy, escaped her lips, lost to the storm's fury. She tried to rise, but her arms trembled, refusing to bear her weight. The white chaos intensified, blurring the boundaries of reality. Surrendering to the encroaching numbness, a strange serenity washed over her ass. The cold tightened its grip, then a glimmered to faint, ethereal glow piercing the swirling white abyss. The windowed at a beacon of warmth in a world of ice. Hope, a frail butterfly, unfurled its wings within her chest. She crawled, each inch of victory hard-won, toward the promise of light. The cottage exuded a quaint charm, tendrils of smoke beckoning from its chimney. A small, burnished plaque read simply, "Bellwether." She reached the door, her numb fingers scrabbling for purchase on the frosted wood. A feeble knock, a mere tap against the tempest's roar, was all she could manage. Inside, Agnes Bellwether stirred a fragrant stew, its savory scent permeating the cozy kitchen. George, nestled by the hearth, absorbed himself in the newspaper, flickering flames painting dancing silhouettes on his weathered face. "Did you hear something, George?" Agnes inquired, her brow furrowed in concern. George lowered the paper. "Only the wind, Agnes, nothing but the wind." "No, I'm certain I heard a sound, almost a whimper." She approached the window, peering into the swirling blizzard. "Good heavens," she exclaimed, her hand flying to her mouth. "George, someone's at the door, looks like a child." George rose deliberately, his expression etched with concern. "In this weather? Agnes, you can't be serious that we don't know who it is. Could be some desperate soul." "George Bellwether, how can you even suggest such a thing? Just look outside. That child will perish out there. We cannot simply abandon them to the elements." Agnes' voice possessed an uncharacteristic steel, her usually gentle eyes flashing with indignation. George sighed, the creases around his eyes deepening. "Agnes, your heart is too tender. Perhaps that we must exercise caution." "Caution be hanged. There is a child out there." George had a child in dire need. She strode purposefully towards the door, her hand already on the latch. "I will not stand idly by while someone suffers." She wrenched the door open, the gale nearly tearing it from her grasp. Ilara lay curled on the threshold, a diminutive, snow-dusted figure, her eyes wide with terror and exhaustion. "Oh, you poor lamb," Agnes breathed, enfolding Ilara in her arms. The girl was shockingly light, her body racked with tremors. George, his earlier misgivings melting away, assisted Agnes in bringing Ilara inside. They laid her gently on the rug before the roaring fire. Her skin felt clammy and unnaturally pale, her lips tinged with an alarming blue. "George, fetch the blankets, quickly, and the hot water bottle," Agnes commanded, her movements now a whirlwind of focused energy. George, spurred by urgency, sprang to action. He returned with a stack of thick, woolen blankets and a steaming hot water bottle swathed in soft flannel. They carefully removed Ilara's sodden clothes, enveloping her in the warm blankets and positioning the hot water bottle near her frigid feet. Agnes kneaded her arms and legs with gentle persistence, endeavoring to restore circulation. After what stretched into an eternity, Ilara stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Her gaze swept across the room, from Agnes' compassionate countenance to George's worried scrutiny. Where am I?" she mumbled, her voice raspy and faint. "You're safe now, dear," Agnes soothed. "You're with us. The storm caught you, didn't it?" Agnes gently spooned warm broth into Ilara, each swallow a small victory against the relentless cold. The warmth spread through her, battling the lingering chill. George remained by the fire, a silent guardian overseeing them both. Later, clad in a borrowed nightgown of comforting softness, Alara sat close to the fire, its heat sinking deep into her bones. That a bowl of fragrant, substantial stew rested in her lap. Each mouthful savored with profound appreciation. It was, without a doubt, the most exquisite meal she had ever tasted. Agnes sat beside her, her hand resting lightly atop Alara's small, trembling one. "What's your name, darling?" Alara hesitated, her voice barely audible. "Alara. Alara Hayes." "Well, Alara Hayes," Agnes said, her voice laced with tenderness and reassurance. "You're safe now. You're home." And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Alara dared to believe her. Gazing at the blazing hearth, at the benevolent faces of Agnes and George, a lone tear traced a path down her cheek. It was not a tear born of sorrow or despair, but of profound gratitude, a tear of nascent hope, a tear of, perhaps, finally, belonging, finding home. The clang of cookware used to trigger a phantom ache, a visceral echo of loss in Alara's chest. Now, in Agnes's bustling kitchen, the sounds dissolved into a comforting backdrop. Agnes, humming a wordless tune, worked the dough with seasoned grace, her hands dusted white. Alara, captivated, watched the rhythmic push and fold. "Care to try your hand?" Agnes offered, smile lines deepening around her eyes. Alara hesitated. I wouldn't know where to start." "Nonsense, child. It's merely dough. Like talking, like breathing, you'll find your rhythm." Agnes pinched off a portion and pressed it into Alara's palm. The cool, pliant substance felt foreign beneath her fingers. She prodded it with tentative curiosity. "Don't be shy," Agnes chuckled, a warm sound in the cozy room. "Give it some muscle. Push, fold, turn. That's the secret." Alara mimicked Agnes's actions, awkward at first, then gaining confidence with each rotation. The dough yielded under her touch, transforming from a stiff mass to a supple form. The kitchen air, thick with the yeasty perfume of baking, enveloped her. Focused, her brow furrowed in concentration, she lost herself in the simple task. "There you have it," Agnes praised, a gentle pat on Alara's shoulder. "A natural, I'd say." The compliment sparked a warmth within Alara that rivaled the oven's heat. Later that week, Alara ventured into George's workshop, a sanctuary filled with sawdust motes dancing in sunbeams and the pungent aroma of pine. George, spectacles perched precariously on his nose, patiently detailed the distinctions between a ripped saw and a crosscut. Alara absorbed every word, finding the workshop's atmosphere, a blend of unfinished projects and the honest scent of wood, a world away from the sterile, impersonal halls of the orphanage. "Now, the grip is key," George instructed, his work-worn hands enveloping hers to guide her. He demonstrated the art of even pressure, the importance of following the marked line. The saw sliced cleanly through the wood, producing a satisfying, gritty song. "Easy does it now," George cautioned, his tone laced with concern. "This ain't a plaything. It's a tool. Treat it with respect, and it'll serve you well." Alara nodded, her concentration unwavering. She drew the saw with slow, deliberate strokes, her muscles protesting with a soft ache. When the cut was complete, the wood bore the mark of her inexperience, yet it was undeniably her creation. A subtle smile played on her lips. Evenings unfolded beside the hearth, where flames licked at seasoned logs. Agnes would read aloud from dog-eared volumes, her voice a warm balm. Occasionally, George would chime in, adding his own homespun wisdom and tales curled. In a plush armchair, Alara would listen, her gaze drawn to the flickering, dancing light. Hesitantly, she began to offer up snippets of her own past, insignificant things like discovering a robin's nest in the orphanage garden, or the surreptitious reading sessions under the covers with a stolen book and a flashlight. One evening, Agnes gently inquired about Alara's parents. The wall instantly went up. I don't have any memories," she breathed, the words barely audible. Agnes reached for Alara's hand, her touch reassuring. "It's all right, love, and no need to delve into it if you'd rather not." But the silence felt heavier than the words threatening to spill. Then, a torrent, she recounted the accident, the disorienting aftermath in the hospital, the gnawing sense of loss. She confessed the stark chill of the orphanage, the ever-present dread, the isolating solitude. The words flowed. A long-held weight began to dissipate, the burden she had silently shouldered finally lightening. George cleared his throat, his eyes reflecting the fire's glow with a moist sheen. "Well now, Alara," he said, his voice rough-edged but undeniably kind. "That's all water under the bridge that you're with us now. And we're not planning on going anywhere." Agnes squeezed Alara's hand, her gaze unwavering. "We're your family now, pet, and family takes care of their own." Alara looked from Agnes to George, her heart swelling with a foreign sensation, a sense of belonging, a whisper of home. The fire popped and hissed, painting the walls with dancing shadows. For the first time in what felt like forever, Alara knew a sense of safety. Scars remained, fear lingered, but she was no longer adrift. She had found her place, a haven, a home, lessons learned. The arithmetic swam before Alara's gaze, a jumbled mess of symbols. Agnes, perched beside her at the time-worn kitchen table, gently nudged the open textbook. "Think of it this way, love," she murmured, her voice a soothing balm. "Say you've picked 3 apples, and your neighbor gives you a pair more. What's your total haul?" Alara worried her lip, tracing the equation with a smudged fingertip. 5. Agnes' face lit up. "Precisely. These numerals are playing the same game, only they're dressed up a bit fancier." The kitchen light, ordinarily a welcoming beacon, seemed to amplify Alara's frustration. School felt like a labyrinth, teeming with children who possessed some secret, and teachers whose lectures washed over her. Half-dash understood that IT was Agnes, with her limitless patience and plain-spoken explanations, who made the imposing seem surmountable. Agnes's hand, toughened by years of nurturing soil and keeping house, rested on Alara's own, a grounding presence. She carried the faint, comforting scent of dried lavender and hearth smoke, a blend that calmed Alara's jitters. George, returning from a back-breaking day repairing fences, draped his coat on the peg by the door, bringing with him the aroma of damp earth and cut hay. He watched them for a moment, a spark of nascent pride flickering in his eyes. Later, following supper, he shared the porch swing with Alara, its rhythmic creaks accompanying the evening chorus of crickets. "Scullin's powerful stuff, Alara," he stated, his voice a low rumble of kindness. "But book learning ain't the whole story. You gotta develop a strong work ethic, too. Take pride in your efforts, no matter how modest they seem." He described the fulfillment derived from crafting something tangible, the quiet dignity found in honest labor. He guided her through weeding the garden, his calloused hands moving with surprising tenderness. He showed her how to mend a fence, emphasizing the significance of a sturdy foundation. He instilled in her a deep reverence for the land and an unwavering faith in the value of perseverance. Subtly, school transformed. Alara devoured books, absorbing knowledge like dry earth drinking an spring shower. She thrived academically, her mind sharp and engaged. Miss Jenkins, her instructor, recognized the nascent brilliance in Alara's eyes, a thirst for understanding that distinguished her. One afternoon, Miss Jenkins asked Alara to stay behind. "Alara," she began, her tone warm and encouraging, "you possess an extraordinary gift. You grasp concepts readily and exhibit a genuine curiosity that is truly rare. Have you given thought to your aspirations for the future?" Alara hesitated, suddenly consumed by shyness. She hadn't dared to contemplate such distant possibilities. Her world had been so circumscribed for so long, confined by the constant need to survive. I don't know," she stammered, nervously picking at a frayed thread on her worn dress. Miss Jenkins smiled gently. "The world is brimming with opportunities. Alara, don't be afraid to explore them. Don't be afraid to reach for aspirations that exceed your current circumstances." She paused, her gaze intense. "You have the capability to achieve remarkable things, Alara. Don't squander it." The weight of those words settled on Alara's young shoulders, a mixture of burden and promise. She recalled Agnes, faithfully tending the garden's bounty, and George, his hands roughened but reliable. She longed to reciprocate their kindness, to elicit their pride. Beyond that, she yearned to forge a future for herself, one liberated from anxieties about sustenance. A future where she might uplift others as Agnes and George had aided her. That night, seated at the kitchen table, wrestling with a particularly thorny algebra problem, Alara experienced a fresh wave of resolve coursing through her veins. The numerals still spun before her eyes, yet now they possessed a different resonance. They were no longer mere abstractions. They represented a pathway, a conduit to a more promising tomorrow. With Agnes's patient instruction and the memory of George's steady hands, she attacked the problem with renewed dedication. Her brow creased in concentration. The solution, when it finally materialized, felt like a small triumph, a testament to her burgeoning strength and tenacity. She understood that the path ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, Alara possessed an unwavering belief in her ability to overcome any obstacle. Lessons awaited, and a world beckoned to be conquered. The gathering storm. It began subtly, a mere scratch in George's throat that he dismissed with a dry chuckle. Just shed dust, he'd croaked, thumping his chest before returning to the rusted tools. Alara, perched on a stool, noticed the pallor beneath his sun-weathered skin, even in the dim light seeping through the grimy window. "Feeling all right, George?" she ventured quietly. He straightened, a slight grimace flickering across his face. "Fit as a fiddle, girl. Just fancy a couple later." But the tickle morphed into a brutal onslaught by night. A deep, chesty cough tore through the stillness, robbing Alara of sleep. Dawn arrived, revealing George slumped and feverish, his face slick with perspiration as Agnes dabbed at his brow with a cool cloth. "We need the doctor, Aggie," Alara stated, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. That Agnes's gaze darted to Alara, a silent battle waged between worry and practicality. The bills, child. The unspoken reality of their threadbare existence hung heavy between them. They both recalled Agnes discreetly foregoing meals, claiming a lost appetite, always when the cupboards were bare. George, too, patched his worn work clothes rather than buying new. Each quiet sacrifice weighed on Alara, a suffocating blend of gratitude and helplessness. "I'll go," Alara declared, rising. "I'll fetch Dr. Abernathy." The doctor, a kindly man behind a gruff exterior, arrived within the hour. His examination was swift, his pronouncements grave. He prescribed antibiotics and mandated rest as he packed. Agnes tentatively inquired about his fee. The sum Dr. Abernathy cited made Agnes's breath catch in her throat. "We'll manage it, doctor," she said, her voice strained taut. Alara glimpsed a flash of pity in the doctor's eyes before he departed. Agnes turned, her face etched with deeper lines of concern. The familiar sparkle in her eyes had been replaced by a pinched, worried look. "I'll check the books, see what we can scrape together," Agnes murmured, shuffling towards the small desk. Alara watched, a wave of protectiveness washing over her. Agnes, once a bastion of strength, appeared suddenly fragile. Alara followed, the metallic jingle of coins as Agnes tallied their meager savings echoing like a somber toll in the quiet room. "It's not enough," Agnes finally whispered, her voice thick with despair. "Nowhere near enough." Alara stepped forward, gently covering Agnes's hand with her own. "We'll find a way," she said, striving to project a confidence she didn't fully feel. Later that night, after Agnes had finally settled George, Alara sat beneath the lamplight at the kitchen table. She unearthed her old schoolbooks, treasures Agnes had insisted on buying despite Alara's inability to attend school regularly. Running a hand across the worn pages, her mind raced, searching for solutions. The desperate idea began to solidify. Mrs. Gable, the town's milliner, was constantly bemoaning her bookkeeping woes. Alara recalled Agnes mentioning it, and Alara, gifted with numbers, a skill honed by managing the household budget with Agnes, wondered, perhaps Mrs. Gable would pay for a few hours of assistance each week. A long shot, certainly, but it was all she had. The wind howled, clawing at the windows. Alara felt a sense of urgency. George's ragged breathing, a muffled counterpoint from the other room, served as a constant, painful reminder of the storm gathering both outside and within their humble dwelling. The looming tempest of sickness and poverty threatened to overwhelm them. Sacrifices. The reek of fried onions was Alara's constant companion. It clung to her, imbuing hair, clothes, even the very pages of her textbooks. The greasy spoon. She flipped burgers, the metallic tang of the hot griddle stinging her nostrils. 3 evenings a week. The poetry of Keats gave way to ketchup stains, higher math to bottomless coffee. Tips barely covered the cost of a bus ticket, but every centime counted. Agnes, ever perceptive, had spotted the smudges of exhaustion beneath Alara's eyes. "You're pushing yourself too hard, love," she'd observed, her voice edged with worry. Alara offered only a wan smile and a mumbled excuse about demanding coursework and early study sessions. Revealing the truth, the knot of anxiety in her stomach felt like an unbearable burden to place on Agnes's already weary shoulders. The stark truth: George wasn't improving. Despite Agnes's loving ministrations and the drain on their meager savings, the treatments merely stalled the inevitable. His cough was a guttural rasp now, a sound that haunted Alara's sleep. His frame, once sturdy, was shrinking, the tweed jacket hanging loose. Alara shunted the burger onto a bun, slapped it on a plate with a handful of pallid fries, and wiped the spotless counter with a practiced hand. Her muscles screamed, her head pounded, yet she plastered on a smile for the burly trucker who claimed a stool. Back at the cottage, after scrubbing away the diner's grime, Alara wrestled her mind back to her studies. The scratch of her pen was a grounding rhythm, a desperate anchor to normalcy. She absorbed information late into the night, powered by stale coffee and a burning need to prove herself, to repay the kindness she had received. She found George in his armchair, a crossword puzzle, abandoned on his lap, the fire reduced to glowing embers that cast elongated, wavering shadows. "Trouble sleeping, George?" Alara's tone was carefully casual. George looked up, his eyes, once bright with amusement, dulled by pain. "Just thinking," he croaked. Alara knelt beside him and took his hand that it was shockingly light, the bones sharp beneath the fragile skin. "About what?" He hesitated, then squeezed her hand weakly. "About Agnes. She's a gem. Alara. A true treasure." Alara nodded, her throat constricted. She knew. Agnes was an unwavering light in a world that had often felt harsh. "Promise me you'll watch over her," George whispered, his voice a bare threat. "When I'm gone." The words struck Alara like a blow. She fought back the rising tide of tears. "Don't say that, George," she begged. He offered a sad, knowing smile. "It's all right. Last we all reach our end. Just promise me." "I promise," Alara managed, her voice thick with emotion. She grasped the weight of that promise that it wasn't merely providing for Agnes. It was safeguarding her spirit, shielding her from the gaping void George would leave. That it was about stepping into the immense space he occupied in her life. She stirred the fire, the revived flames a tiny act of defiance against the gathering darkness. She glanced at George. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and uneven. The price she paid escalated daily, unacknowledged by anyone but herself. Sleep, ambition, the very shape of her future now seemed like expendable commodities. She ran on fumes, fueled by love and the fierce hope that she could somehow make everything right. Yet, a chilling premonition whispered that even her most valiant efforts might ultimately fall short at a gentle farewell. The fire in the hearth guttered, sketching elongated, wavering shapes on the walls. George's breaths came in ragged pulls, each one a visible struggle. Agnes sat close, hand resting lightly in his, a fragile connection. Perched on the arm of a faded chair, Alara watched George, etching the map of his face, the chronicles of joy and hardship, into her memory. The air hung heavy with unspoken farewells, thick with the gravity of what was to come. At a slight shift, eyelids fluttering like trapped moths. "Agnes." His voice, a mere rasp. "I'm here, darling," Agnes murmured, her voice catching. She leaned in, gently sweeping a stray wisp of silver hair from his brow. That a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Alara, you're here too." Alara's legs wobbled as she rose and knelt beside him, taking his other hand. His skin felt like parchment under her touch. "Yes, George, that I'm here." He looked between them, a fleeting contentment warming his gaze. "I had a good life, that a rich life, far more than I deserved." He paused, wrestling for air. "Agnes, you gave me everything. Love, laughter, a family blossomed." Agnes squeezed his hand, tears gathering like storm clouds. "You mirrored it all back to me, George. You are my world. Turning to Alara, his expression softened further. And you, Alara, you brought a new dawn into our lives, a vibrant hue, a space I didn't realize was empty. A dry, rattling cough shook him. Promise me. Promise me you'll look after Agnes. Barely audible, Alara's voice trembled. I promise, George, with every fiber of my being. Agnes nodded, tears now cascading freely. We'll care for each other, George. We will. He closed his eyes briefly, summoning his last reserves. When they opened, clarity resided there, an almost serene acceptance. Remember the garden, the roses blooming, the drone of bees drunk on summer blossoms. A shadow of a smile played on his lips. Remember the stories spun, the echoing laughter, the woven tapestry of our love. His grip slackened. The fire spat weakly, a brief shower of sparks dancing up the flue. A log settled with a soft groan. Only the shallow cadence of George's breathing remained, each exhalation a step closer to silence. Then nothing. Agnes gasped, sobs convulsing her frame. Alara remained tethered to his hand, tears blurring the room into an impressionistic swirl. She looked to Agnes, her face a canvas of desolation, and reached out. Agnes responded, arms opening in mute invitation. Alara collapsed into her embrace, burying her face in the offered comfort. They clung together, two silhouettes against the fading embers, sharing the weight of sorrow, finding sanctuary in their shared heartbreak. The combined fragrance of lavender and wood smoke permeated the air, a bittersweet echo of the life they'd shared with George. The first pale gold fingers of dawn reached through the window. Agnes and Alara remained intertwined, tears spent, a quiet resignation descending. They knew the pain would linger, a dull ache residing deep within, but they were not isolated in their grief. They possessed each other, a connection born of love and strengthened by the crucible of loss. Agnes gently stroked Alara's hair. He's at peace now, she breathed, her voice rough. He's finally free. Alara nodded, her eyes still raw. He wouldn't want our despair, she choked, voice wavering. He'd want us to cherish the good times. Agnes managed a faint smile, a lone tear carving its path down her cheek. You're right, Alara, so right. They remained there, entwined, drawing strength from their collective sorrow, their hearts bound by the enduring memory of the man they both treasured. The sun ascended, bathing the room in a warm, gentle benediction, a final farewell to a life richly lived. The garden still awaited, and though winter tightened its grip, they knew spring would inevitably return, bringing with it roses, buzzing bees, and the promise of renewal. Promises kept. Sunbeams, fractured by dusty panes, illuminated swirling particles. Agnes hacked, a dry, painful sound echoing the emptiness of the house. Gone was Thomas's booming presence, the industrious hum of his shed. Each groan of the aging structure, each whisper of wind against the clapboard, was a mournful echo of what she had lost. Even simple tasks were monumental. She struggled to heft the skillet, her hands unsteady. Neglect had overtaken the flower beds Thomas had so lovingly cultivated. The roof threatened to give way. The porch slumped like a weary old man, and the bank, a patient predator, continued its relentless pursuit. The foreclosure notice, tucked away in the pantry, was a constant, dull ache. Alara found her doubled over at the sink, her body trembling. Agnes? What's wrong? Agnes straightened, swiping at her damp eyes. Just weary, dear. This old place, it needs more than I can give it now. Alara's graduation dawned, a day of brilliant sunshine that mocked the turmoil in Agnes's soul. Inside the packed auditorium, the excited babble was a muffled drone. She gripped her worn handbag, the leather softened by years of worry. When Alara's name rang out, a surge of pride, pure and potent, flooded Agnes. Her Alara, valedictorian at the podium. Alara's dark hair caught the stage lights like spun silk. That a newfound confidence resonated in her clear, strong voice as she thanked her teachers, her classmates. And then, turning her gaze directly towards Agnes, her expression softened. To Agnes Bellwether, she declared, her voice thick with emotion, who gave me a home and a heart when I had neither. You taught me kindness, resilience, and unwavering love. This achievement is for you. The applause thundered. Agnes touched her eyes, a true smile finally breaking through. Later, back in the quiet of the house, Elara outlined her plans at a job in a distant city, a position with promise and invaluable experience. Agnes listened, her heart plummeting with each carefully chosen word. "I know it's a long way," Elara said, kneeling beside Agnes's chair, her brow furrowed with concern. "But it's the best opportunity I can save money faster there." Agnes reached for her hand trembling as she touched Elara's face. "I understand, dear, you must chase your dreams." "My dream is right here, with you," Elara insisted, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "This house, it's everything that I promise you. Agnes, I will save it, I will work, I will scrimp, and I will be back that I'll pay off the debt, mend the roof, and we'll plant roses again, just as Thomas always dreamed." She clasped Agnes's hands, her grip firm and reassuring. "And I promise to take care of you. You won't have to worry." Agnes looked into Elara's eyes, seeing not just the accomplished young woman she had become, but also the frightened, abandoned child who had sought refuge years ago. She saw the unwavering resolve that burned within her, a beacon of love and gratitude. "I believe you, Elara," Agnes said, her voice thick with emotion. "I truly do." The following morning was thick with unspoken apprehension. Agnes stood on the porch, watching Elara's taxi recede, a single suitcase her sole companion as the vehicle vanished down the winding drive. Agnes breathed a silent prayer, pleading for strength, patience, and the fulfillment of a promise. The weight of the house, the uncertainty of the future, pressed down, but this time, it was interwoven with a fragile strand of hope, like a tenacious vine creeping through the cracks in the foundation. She had Elara's vow, and for now, Agnes knew, that would have to be enough. Hawthorne's offer. Years bled into each other, marked only by the slow accumulation of coins in Elara's worn leather purse. The city swallowed her whole, a tiny cog in a machine that never stopped grinding. Days blurred into weeks, then months, filled with the clatter of the diner, the sizzle of frying onions, and the relentless demands of impatient customers. She learned to balance trays laden with steaming plates, to decipher garbled orders shouted over the din, and to deflect the occasional unwanted advances. With a practiced grace that belied her age, she sent every spare penny back to Agnes. Each letter carried not just money, but also stories, sanitized versions of her life, carefully curated to avoid causing worry. She wrote of friendly coworkers, of charming city parks, of opportunities that sparkled just out of reach. The truth, a constant ache in her chest, was a different story entirely. The loneliness gnawed at her, a persistent hunger that even the best diner food couldn't satisfy. One crisp autumn afternoon, a black car, polished to a blinding sheen, pulled up to the curb outside Agnes's house. Reginald Hawthorne emerged, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the faded paint of the porch swing. He adjusted his silk tie, the diamond pin glinting in the afternoon sun, and strode confidently towards the door. Agnes answered, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of the imposing figure. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said, a hint of apprehension in her voice. "Mrs. Bellwether," he replied, his voice smooth and practiced. "I trust you received my letter." He gestured towards the house with a dismissive wave of his hand. Charming place, full of character, but hardly practical these days. He launched into his pitch, a rehearsed monologue about untapped potential, prime real estate, and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He offered her a sum that made her head spin, enough to live comfortably for the rest of her days, to travel, to indulge in all the little luxuries she denied herself for so long. Agnes listened, her gaze fixed on the worn floorboards of the porch. The money was tempting, undeniably so that it would solve so many problems, ease so many worries. But the thought of leaving this place, of uprooting the memories that clung to every wall and every corner, filled her with a deep, unsettling sadness. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Hawthorne," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. "But this house, it's more than just bricks and mortar, it's home." Hawthorne's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, that he recovered quickly, his tone shifting from persuasive to subtly condescending. "Sentimentality is a luxury you can't afford, Mrs. Bellwether. This neighborhood is changing, Progress is inevitable. Soon, you'll be surrounded by developments, by noise, well, frankly, by things you wouldn't approve of. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur. Think of your future. Think of your comfort. Think of, Alara, wouldn't you like to leave her something substantial, something that will set her up for life? Agnes stiffened. He knew about Alara. That knowledge felt like a violation, a cold hand reaching into the warmth of her home. Alara doesn't need money, she said, her voice regaining its strength. She needs to know she has a place to come home to. Hawthorne sighed, a theatrical display of patience wearing thin. You're being unreasonable, Mrs. Bellwether. I'm offering you a fortune. A chance to escape. Don't let pride stand in your way. He placed a card in her hand, the gold lettering gleaming in the fading light. Think about it.my offer stands for now. He turned and walked back to his car, leaving Agnes standing on the porch, the weight of his words pressing down on her. The silence that followed was broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of the city, a constant reminder of the relentless force that was pushing against the fragile haven she had built. Full circle. Agnes swung gently on the weathered porch, the swing's gentle groan a somber counterpoint to the cheerful chirping of birds. The for sale sign, stuck in the front yard, felt like a cruel jest, a stark decree of what was to come. Her eyelids drifted shut, conjuring George among his beloved roses, his booming laugh resonating through the fragrant air. The recollection sparked a sweet ache of joy, laced with unbearable grief. That a crunch of tires heralded a guest. Agnes's eyes fluttered open in surprise. Alara stood at the base of the porch steps, transformed. Time had etched its passage on her features, smoothing the sharp edges of youth. But more than that, a newfound confidence radiated from her, a quiet strength, a beacon in the stillness. Gone was the skittish sparrow who once sought sanctuary in Agnes's kitchen. Alara, my dear, what a delightful surprise. Agnes pushed herself up, her knees emitting a familiar complaint. Come, sit a spell. Alara mounted the steps deliberately, her gaze sweeping over the familiar facade, the garden's bloom, the swaying swing that a ghost of a smile danced on her lips. It's good to be back. They settled into a comfortable quiet, punctuated only by the creak of the swing. Agnes scrutinized Alara, searching for clues to explain this unexpected return. Presently, Alara reached into her worn leather satchel. She drew out a substantial envelope and extended it to Agnes. I brought something for you. Agnes accepted the envelope, her fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. The embossed insignia of Bellwether Savings and Loan was unmistakable, but a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. What is this, love? Alara's tone was calm, unwavering. The deed to the house, Agnes.it belongs to you. Or to us, if you'll allow it. Agnes gaped at the envelope, bewildered. What are you saying? How could you? I purchased it. Agnes, I've stashed away every spare cent for years. Since you and George took me in. I vowed to find a way to repay your generosity, and this felt like the only true way. Emotion constricted Agnes's throat, silencing her. Tears blurred her vision. She reached out, her hand closing over Alara's. Oh, Alara, she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. You shouldn't have. But I wanted to, Alara countered, her own eyes glistening. This house, it's more than lumber and plaster. Agnes, it's sanctuary. It's where I finally knew safety, where I grasped the meaning of love that I couldn't bear to see it slip away. Agnes embraced Alara, holding her close. The intervening years seemed to vanish, and she was holding that frightened little girl once more. Except now, the girl was resilient, accomplished, and had offered her a gift beyond measure. The following weeks were a flurry of activity. Agnes and Alara, united by purpose and fueled by affection, plunged into renovations with gusto. They mended cracked plaster, sanded the worn boards, and splashed every room with bright, cheerful hues. Alara, surprisingly adept with tools, tackled structural repairs, while Agnes, with her seasoned eye, oversaw the decorating, imbuing the rooms with coziness and character. They worked in tandem, laughing, reminiscing, exchanging stories of George's life. The house, once draped in somber grief, now resonated with vibrant sounds of renewal. Slowly, deliberately, They were not merely restoring the structure, but also mending the fractures in their own hearts. The garden, too, thrived under their shared touch. Elara, remembering George's precise instructions, tended the roses, coaxing them into a vibrant display. Agnes cultivated herbs and vegetables, perfuming the air with piquant scents. Like the house, the garden became a testament to their bond and unwavering devotion at long last. The renovations reached completion. Agnes and Elara stood on the porch, drinking in their accomplishments, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. The house glowed with a renewed vibrancy. The for sale sign was gone, replaced by a quaint, hand-painted marker that proclaimed Bellwether House. Agnes eased into the swing, Elara settling beside her. Agnes opened George's beloved anthology of poems by Robert Frost. She began to read aloud, her voice soft and resonant. The familiar verses hung in the air, a soothing balm for their spirits as she read. Agnes glanced at Elara. Her expression was peaceful, her eyes closed in rapt attention. Agnes understood that their journey had come full circle. They had taken something shattered and rebuilt it, stronger and more beautiful than before. They had fashioned a legacy of love, compassion, and steadfast fidelity. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, Agnes knew they were truly home, together.